Hey guys, welcome to our math lesson. Let's go ahead and get started by reading our learning target. I can tell in right time from analog and digital clocks to the nearest 5 minutes using AM and PM. So let's look at that. I can use analog clock. So this is an analog clock. It's the clock that has the numbers that go around it. So we can tell time from an analog clock, how to write that time correctly. And I can tell time from a digital clock. A digital clock is where we use the digits to tell the time, or that shows the time here, okay? Now, it says to the nearest 5 minutes. 1 minute equals 60 seconds, and a minute is a unit of time. We also need to be able to tell the hour. The hour is 1 hour that equals 60 minutes. So as an hour passed, that is a new time or a new unit of time, okay? The hour hand is the shorter hand on the clock, okay? We'll look more at AM and PM in just a minute, but let's go ahead real quick and let's look at how we tell time. So the first step that we need to look at is our hour hand, which is our shorter hand. We look at the last hour that the hour hand has passed. When we're telling time with the hour, we use the large numbers that are represented on the clock. We do not pass the hour hand to tell the time. Here, our hour hand just passed the 2. So we will look at that hour 2 that our hand just passed. Our minute hand is our longer hand, and it is told by the individual minutes all the way around the clock. In between each digit on the clock, it shows 5 minutes. Okay? That's why we tell time in the minutes by those individual minutes that go around. Okay? So our hour hand is exactly on the 6, but we wouldn't read this time as 2-6. We have to tell the minutes that 6 is representing. So we're going to start at the 12 and count by 5s, because remember there are 5 minutes in between each, and there are 60 minutes in a whole hour. So we're going to start at the 12, and we're going to count by 5s. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. Okay, so the time that is shown on this clock is 2:30. If our hour hand is directly on the 12, that's when we read it's on the hour and we say o'clock. Okay? All right, so today we're going to continue practicing with this idea of being able to tell time. We will be in our Ready Math Journal, Volume 1. We are going to be on page 277. 277. Okay? All right, this question says, Evan starts eating breakfast at the time shown on the clock. What time does he start eating breakfast? So we want to know what time that Evan starts eating breakfast. Okay? So I want to help us walk through this. What position is the hour hand? What position does that tell us? It tells us the hour, right? What does the position of the minute hand tell you? Okay, it tells you how many minutes it has been since that hour started, right? And then we need to know if it is AM or PM. Remember, AM is the time from midnight until lunchtime. So that morning time, okay? PM is the time from noon till before midnight, okay? So think about when you eat breakfast. Would you eat it before noon or would you eat it after noon? Okay? All right, go ahead and answer this question. When you're done, you may unpause the video for us to continue our learning. All right, now let's go ahead and let's look at how we can tell time to make sure that we told the time correctly, okay? So now we're on page 278. So the hour hand is the shorthand. Remember, the position of the hour hand tells us the hour that we're in. Remember, our anchor chart told us that if we are looking at our hour hand, we're looking at the time that the hour has passed. So our hour hand is between 7 and 8. We have to look at the time that it has passed. If it's in between, go back. So we're looking at that 7. The minute hand is pointed to the 4, but we wouldn't read this time as 7-4. Remember, our minute hand represents how many minutes have passed in the hour. So remember, we start at 12 and we count around our clock 4 times. What do we count by around our clock 4 times? We count by 5, don't we? 5, 5, 5, 5. So we count 5s 4 times. Let's do that. 5, 10, 15, 20. So the time on our clock is showing 7:20. So this is how we can write that digital time, okay? So we're taking the analog clock and writing it in digital time, okay? Was this a.m. when we eat breakfast or p.m.? It is before noon, so it is a.m. We can also use what we already know to help us figure out the time. So we know that this clock reads 7:15, or 15 minutes past 7, okay? Now, to get to 7:20, if we're at 7:15, all we would have to do is add 5 more minutes to show 20. So 15 plus 5 equals 20. So here is an example of using what we know to tell the time of 7:20, okay? All right, now we're going to go ahead and we're going to go back and we're going to think about the time that these clocks show. What time does Evan start eating breakfast? We're now on page 279. He starts eating breakfast at 7:20 a.m. All right, now this clock shows what time Evan finishes breakfast. So go ahead and tell me what time Evan finishes breakfast. All right, so it wants us to look at what we know about the hour. So I want you to circle the hour hand. The hour hand is the shorthand, right? We look at the hour hand, and if it's not directly pointing on a number, we look at the hour that it has just passed. So if I follow this all the way out, it has just passed the 7, okay? So we know that the hour is 7 because the hand has just passed the 7, but it hasn't made it to the 8 yet. Now we can skip count to find the number of minutes. Now I want you to circle your minute hand. Remember, that is your long hand. We're going to count by 5s to tell our minutes. We're going to start at 12 and count by 5s. Ready? 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. So when we counted around the clock, we got 50 minutes. So how many minutes is it when Evan finishes breakfast? Okay, the clock shows 50 minutes after what hour? 7. So the time that Evan finishes breakfast is 7:50. Remember, we said that he started breakfast in a.m. So do you think he finishes his breakfast in the a.m. too? Yes, he does. He finishes his breakfast in the a.m. Now, instead of us starting at the 12 and counting all the way around by 5, I'm going to erase this really quickly. What minutes could we just quickly look at the clock and know? If our minute hand is pointing down at the 6, we know that that's 30 minutes. So then we could start at 30 and count around, couldn't we? 35, 35, 40, 45, 50, couldn't we? Okay? So remember, we can either start and count all the way around for our minutes or find one that we know, like a friendly time, and then we could count on from there. All right, let's go ahead and let's continue practicing. We're now going to be on page 280. 280. All right, let's go ahead and let's look at number 6. Number 6 says the top clock shows when Mark goes to bed. Write the same time on the digital clock. Remember, that was our learning target, being able to tell and write time in analog and digital time, okay? What time does Mark go to bed? Circle AM or PM. All right, so let's go ahead and let's first start by looking at our hand. That's our shorthand, right? If we follow it all the way back, it is just past the 8. So when we're looking at the hour, we have to look at the hour that it just passed. So it is just past the 8. Now we look at our minute hand. Our minute hand is pointing to the 7, but we don't say that our time is 8:07. We have to count our minutes by 5s. Remember, all the way around our clock is 60 minutes, so it's broken up into 5-minute times. Okay? So we could start at 12 and count all the way around, but I know one time really quickly off the top of my head that if the minute hand is pointing to the 6, that means that it's 30 minutes. So I'm going to start from there and count 30, 35. So the time on the clock written in digital format is 8:35. Now, what time does Mark go to bed? AM or PM? Think about when you go to bed. Do you go to bed afternoon and before midnight? Or do you go to bed before noon? You go to bed afternoon, don't you? So that would be PM time. So the time that Mark goes to bed is 8:35 PM. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and go to number 7. Kate gets home from school at the time shown on the clock. This is a digital clock here. Circle AM or PM. So what we're doing now is we're practicing that learning target of taking and telling time, writing and telling time from a digital clock and writing it as analog clock time, okay? So the time is 3:10. So our hour hand is going to point at the 3, okay? And we need to make sure that we draw our hour hand shorter than our minute hand. Now, will our minute hand point at the 10 digit on the clock? No, it won't, will it? Because we have to count our minutes by 5s, okay? So remember those little individual lines around the clock represent the minutes. So if we start at 12 and we count by 5s, 5, 10, our minute hand will point at the 2 because that represents 10 minutes past the hour. So will Kate get home from school at 3:10 a.m. in the morning or 3:10 p.m. afternoon? Yes, 3:10 p.m. afternoon. Great job, guys. All right, now you're going to answer the question. Sasha eats lunch at 11:40 a.m. Which clock shows the time she eats lunch? Okay? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and find my hour hand, and I know that that needs to be pointing to the 11. Which one is my hour hand, the long hand or the short hand? The shorter hand. So I'm going to circle the shorter hand in these clocks. All right, so I can automatically cross off A because my shorthand is pointing at A. No. All right, now I need to look for 40. Remember, we count our minutes by what? By 5s. So let's start here. Oops, let's look at this minute hand for hour hand for a minute. Remember, when we're telling our hour, we have to look at the hour that it just passed. So in B, the hour just passed 10. So that one is not going to be it. Let me check my hour hands on this one. Just past 11. Just past 11. Okay, so we're looking at C and D here. Now I count my minutes by 5. So let's look. Here, it's pointing at the 4 in C. I'm going to start at 12 and count 5, 10, 15, 20. So this clock shows 11:20. Now, this minute hand is pointing to the 8. So let's count our minutes. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. So D shows the correct time of 11:40. All right, guys, when we're telling and writing time to the nearest 5 minutes, it's really important that we know the difference in our hour hand and our minute hand and how to find the right time for both, okay? All right, guys, have fun practicing with telling time. Bye.